also follow Maitreya. Wayne Peterson, a retired American diplomat and admitted supporter of Maitreya with connections to the Pentagon and the United Nations, stated the following about Mikhail Gorbachev in the White House in a Vision magazine interview, June 20th, 2000. Reporter Kendall Klug asks, I believe Mikhail Gorbachev has publicly stated his belief of the existence of Maitreya. Do you know if this is true? Wayne Peterson answers, I have one little story I could tell you about Gorbachev. A friend of mine who has worked with the World Bank went to the Heads of State Conference in Europe and gave a speech where he borrowed many of Maitreya's ideas for economic reform out of a book by Benjamin Krem that I had given him. He told me that he had read the book on his flight to Europe and realized that his keynote address to these world officials, especially presidents and prime ministers, it was a very high-level meeting, was going to be very boring, with many having heard similar sentiments over and over. So he thought he would throw in some of Maitreya's ideas into the speech. The country he was in had a reigning monarch who invited him to lunch the next day. When he showed up for lunch, there were 16 to 20 people there, including Mr. Gorbachev. The monarch of this country said to my friend, I suppose you're wondering why we invited you here today. Well, we are all curious about where you got those ideas for your speech, which you presented yesterday. He said that my friend Wayne gave me a book written by Benjamin Krem about Maitreya's mission. Immediately they nodded their heads. We thought so, was the apparent response. That's why we invited you here. We all know of Maitreya, and we're doing what we can for him. But we are not able to say anything publicly because we are world leaders. We each have our own public to deal with. Only one person there stood up and said that they could use his name to legitimize these sightings, and that was Mikhail Gorbachev. He was the only man in the room who would say, use my name if you want. The reporter asks, do you think President Clinton has had an experience with Maitreya? Wayne Peterson, I don't know if President Clinton has. I believe that former President Bush has. We used to have transmission meditation groups that Maitreya had asked us to do around Washington, D.C. People who were interested in Maitreya and the reappearance story would get together once a week in Georgetown, in the home of President Bush's main counselor at the White House. President Bush came over to this house for dinner one night, and the hostess was in the dining room as President Bush asked her, what do you think? I'm running against Clinton in this election. Am I going to win? She said, no, Mr. President, you are not. Maitreya has already said that you are going to lose to Clinton. Bush never challenged her, but merely said, yeah. He didn't ask who Maitreya was. He was very quiet, and then said, I think I've got to go now. Benjamin Krem has said many times that he had heard from one of Maitreya's associates that Maitreya had appeared to Bush and that they had a discussion in the White House. So that incident with my meditation group seemed to confirm that Bush did in fact know of Maitreya. I do know people in the White House have been visited by Maitreya many times, and the people I'm talking I've seen on the front page of the Washington Post standing next to the president.